Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Audrey Lewis, Marketing Specialist at Tealium, and I'll be your moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar will last approximately 30 minutes and will be recorded. The slides and recording will be made available at the end of the session. We have some related resources available for you in the attachments section of the platform, so please feel free to engage with them at any point. We also want to hear your questions, so please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions throughout the webinar. For any questions that we're not able to answer live, we'll follow up with you after. Now, on to today's presenters. Matt Parisi is the Director of Product Marketing at Tealium. He has over 10 years of strategic marketing experience across both traditional and digital marketing channels. His experience spans industries working both at consultancies and client side. Ryan Penz is one of our solutions consultants here at Tealium. He utilizes his technology and digital marketing expertise to support Tealium's sales efforts, as well as translates the technical merits of our solutions into value for clients. And with that, let's get started. Matt, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Audrey. So like Audrey mentioned, we'll be going for about 30 minutes today. The first 20 minutes are going to be us going through the platform, showing basically the value of what the Tealium tools can do. We'll go over the products that specifically make up Tealium's Customer Data Hub. And Ryan will take you through the platform a little bit so you can see it in action. If you do have questions, please enter those in the chat box and we will answer those questions at the end. Like I said, the demo here is gonna be pretty short. So anything where you might have any specific questions to your situation, we can always set up a customized demo later on. With that, let's hop right in. So Tealium helps brands today compete basically in customer experience. So delivering experience in the age of digital transformation can be challenging because the landscape is fragmented. So we believe the most impactful way that you can thrive in this market is in your mastery of managing customer data, or in other words, first-party data. So because experience all depends on your ability to put the customer at the center of your business. This is, of course, very difficult when we get into the real world with all of these different technologies that we're using to engage the customer. In common approaches to customer data today, the view of the customer actually lives across a lot of different places. Here you can see 10 of those places where the view of the customer might ultimately live. To solve this, Tealium enables companies to literally put customer data, or the profile that represents your view of the customer engagement, at the center of your CX for action and analysis. So whether it's a system that is meant to engage the customer or a system that's meant to analyze the data that as a result of those engagements. So specifically how and why we do this will probably make sense to you a little bit differently based on your individual role. So for that purpose, we'll go through exactly kind of what is the value of Tealium based on your particular role. For marketers, it's all about owning your customer data for the purpose of better customer experiences. So you're creating a single view of your customer that's unique to your business, unique to your segmentation strategy, and you are personalizing experiences on top of this view of your customer. For analytics and insights professionals, we're owning the customer data for the purposes of generating insights and analysis. So for this particular role, the value of Tealium is more around the standardized and unified data infrastructure that ultimately leads to a better analysis of what the customer is doing across many channels. And core to this approach is basically making the data understandable in your own business's terms that are accessible across your organization, because ultimately the value of the data comes down to people actually using the data. And then lastly, for developers, owning your customer data is important for the purposes of powering your tech stack and applications that you have built on top of that data. With the approach that Tealium takes to customer data, we can help organizations eliminate reliance on third-party data sources, and we can also provide more seamless integration with all of your tools from kind of a common foundation of your view of the customer. So what makes up the customer data hub? How do we achieve kind of the value that we've described there? Well, the customer data hub is made up of 4 main areas of solutions. First off, we have data collection and quality. This is made up of our tag management system, Tealium IQ, and Tealium Event Stream API Hub. These tools basically give us a lot of options for collecting data in a privacy conscious way to get data, customer data into the system, where we can ultimately manipulate that data to build insights into the data, and then leverage that data in whatever integrated system or tool we're referring to. Secondly, we have our customer data platform and predictive insights. This is the Tealium Audience Stream Customer Data Hub and Tealium Predict ML. These tools basically take the robust event data foundation from Tealium IQ and Event Stream and construct customer profiles with rich insights that are defined ultimately by the user of the customer data hub. And then anything you're tracking in Audience Stream Customer Data Platform is something that you can predict using Tealium Predict ML and act on that prediction, so that ultimately you can either target or suppress the customers that you have that are most likely to achieve a certain action that you define, or you can suppress people who are least likely to achieve certain goals. We also have data management products called Tealium Data Access, basically making the Tealium data set available to you for extending the value of the data in internal systems. And we also have a robust turnkey integration marketplace of over 1,300 integrations between tags, APIs, and connectors. So the way that we leverage these tools is ultimately through an approach that we call the data supply chain. The data supply chain has 5 steps to managing the data. First off, we talked about data collection through our API hub and tag management system. All data that's collected is then standardized in order to construct customer profiles that you see in the middle. Those customer profiles become the foundation for building segments, or what we call audiences, that are then activated across your whole tech stack, whether that's a tool for insights like web analytics or business intelligence, or whether it's powering customer engagement through email tools or website personalization, like Ryan is going to take us through an example here in just 1 minute. So with that, why don't I go ahead and turn it over to Ryan, and Ryan can let us see it in action. Ryan, we don't hear you.
Oh, let me get my screen
there you go.
Going.
There we go.
Awesome. So thanks, Matt, for setting us up there nicely. I'm really excited to run everybody through this quick overview today of the Tealium platform and get a peek under the hood. But first, I quickly want to showcase an example of personalization working on our retail and demo website here that we have set up. We are going to be focusing, and the demo is really around retail today, but just know for anybody out there, a lot of these use cases can extend to anybody that might be trying to personalize a user experience or better understand their customer data just at a high level. So jumping in here really quickly, you can see that this basic landing page, I'm displayed with kind of this generic shop these certain categories banner that's flipping through, as everybody can kind of see. As I start to navigate through the website, potentially looking at some products, viewing some details, maybe adding things to my cart, the customer data platform in the background is listening to this behavior and is able to basically start to personalize based on what we know about this right now unknown user. So I'm clicking around into the men's section. I added that blazer to my cart. When I navigate back to the home page, we'll quickly see that I'm now displayed with a banner for in-store pickup, buying it online and then going and picking it up for free at the store. Something that we've all become very accustomed to here the past year or so, given the circumstances. But This is just a really simple example showing that we're able to change a customer experience based on a little bit of information that we know about them. And the CDP, again, can be configured to meet a number of different use cases. This was just activating a quick personalization tool to make sure that somebody who has something in their cart or a men's affinity is displayed with a free pickup banner here. So we'll touch on jumping into the system. We'll actually showcase here a number of different use cases that we could potentially work with. So as I switch into the customer data hub, just a quick level set. This looks very similar to the slides that Matt was just showing. So this is the data supply chain that I have built out for this demo account. Just moving left to right, we're connecting to a number of data sources. So in this case, we're going to be focusing mostly on web data primarily. Just know that the CDP can connect to things like CRM systems, APIs and data warehouses, email tools, a number of different things that I'll showcase in just a second. But what we're doing here is allowing you to collect the data from these different sources. We have the ability to inspect and enrich this data with our customer data platform. We automatically segment users into audiences, and then in real time, connect this to a downstream destination. We'll focus on some email providers and social channels today, as well as a personalization tool in this example. But the important thing is we're collecting data from all of these sources and in an automated fashion able to send it to downstream technologies, whether that's your marketing tools or whether that's something like your data warehouse. So the first step in the data supply chain here is connecting to these data sources. Now, I've got a couple quick examples just set up in this demo, but you can see here how Audience Stream integrates with a number of different data sources. So Tealium obviously has our very powerful and enterprise-leading tag management system, Tealium IQ. We can very easily integrate with that platform, no problem. But you'll see here Google Tag Manager, Adobe Launcher, a couple other very popular web tracking tools that are out there. We can also build out a data supply chain with native mobile apps, IoT devices, ESPs, CRM systems. We also have a couple flavors of API endpoints. So if you don't see your vendor up here, they can generally send us data via our API, or we have the ability to set up a quick file transfer service where you're able to simply drag and drop files that you need to upload into the CDP. That's really important for helping marry online and offline data sets that some customers might be working with. So now that we have data sources connected to our data supply chain, we're really going to focus today on how Audience Stream builds experiences and enriches this incoming event level data so that we can provide these experiences and activate to all the downstream technologies you might be working with. So in my data supply chain here and in the attributes that I've built out, you can see here that we allow you to add these attributes based on the use cases that you might be working for. And this will pretty much allow you to build towards any type of use case that might be out there. So our date attribute here very quickly allows us to denote when somebody made a purchase or submitted a form, potentially the last date of their activity with us. A number data type can be used to increment and remember and calculate totals. For the retailers in the room, think of things like lifetime client value or average orders over a given time period. The badge data type here allows us to combine any number of these attributes that we might create to help personify users as well. So within the system, coming back to our example with that men's affinity and clothing affinity that we personalized to in my quick little example on the front end, this is using very simple logic that's saying, hey, if somebody's tally favorite equals men, in this case, the product tally that I'm looking at, go ahead and badge them as having a men's clothing affinity. This can very easily translate to any number of different products or verticals that people might be working with. So for financial services folks in the room, think of people submitting potentially a loan application or navigating to loan products on the page. we can easily start to calculate affinities for those and produce badges based on whatever that might be. Now, you can see I've got just a couple other quick examples that are showcasing the last purchase date, non-purchasers for retargeting efforts. These are just a few very simple examples that we can use. Just note that you'll have really the full breadth of our attributes to build depending upon the use cases you're trying to solve for. I quickly want to highlight, in this case, we're using business logic to define our attributes. Matt spoke a little bit earlier about our Predict ML module. With our CDP, we allow you to build models that will spit out a propensity variable. And instead of using conditional logic, we'll actually use a propensity score that Tealium will spit out on their likelihood to take an action of sorts. So we can predict either their likelihood to return to the website, or we can predict their likelihood to act. In this case, it could be performing a form submission or making a purchase. I just quickly wanted to highlight that we have these capabilities. There's obviously not enough time to jump into that today. We can do a whole demo on that itself, but I quickly wanted to highlight it as a differentiator because nobody else currently is offering native machine learning within their CDP. So now that we've got our attributes and experiences built out, really the next step in the process here is grouping our attributes into audiences. So visitor profiles that are sharing a set of attribute conditions that we just built out on the last page are going to be what make up our audiences here in the customer data platform. Sticking with our men's apparel example, you can see here I'm adding attribute conditions from the last page and building out my audience strategy based on a combination of those. So the more conditions that you use to create an audience, the more specific it can potentially get. But in this case, what we've done is we've recognized that this person has an affinity for men's apparel based on that category tally that we were showcasing a little bit earlier. We know that I've abandoned a cart with something within the cart, and we have an email captured on this user so that we can now actually start to potentially retarget them. We could send them an email, add them to a list, send them to a display ad, whatever it might be. So this is just a quick example showcasing our men's apparels fan, but very similar to how we built out attributes. You can do the same thing using your conditions here with audiences. So any number of and or conditions can be used based on the use case that you're solving for. Now, these audiences are huge advantages to your data supply chain because instead of having silos for each of your different technology, having to upload the list to Facebook and the email providers, etc., you now have a centralized place where you can align and create these audiences directly within Audience Stream, and then we'll activate them in real time as users qualify to downstream technologies using what we call connectors. So audiences are basically connecting out to any of our downstream technology ecosystems here using our connector marketplace. So we have 200 of these already built out so that you can come in here and simply search for a number of categories along this left-hand side. But I want to showcase quickly a quick tool that some may be familiar with Eloqua for email automation. This allows us to take a number of different actions within the supported APIs of the Eloqua stack. So you can see here, we can add, remove, insert, and update contacts. We can also unsubscribe them and insert custom objects that you might be working with. Some people using Eloqua as like a CRM. So this just quickly showcases all the actions that we can take. What we're doing here is sourcing from the audiences that we just built on the last page to take whatever action it might be. So sticking with my men's apparels fan, when somebody becomes a men's apparel fan, we can now take an action within Eloqua or really any number of our other connectors. So just quickly showcasing our marketplace, as I type in Salesforce, you can see we have a number of pretty much the entire Salesforce stack built out. So the Marketing Cloud, the CRM, DMP, etc. that connector is going to go through the same process that the Eloqua one was that I just showcased as well. For our marketers in the room, Facebook audiences and conversion APIs are available here, so you can move people in and out of Facebook audiences automatically. And then personalization, sticking with our example from a little bit earlier, we can connect with a number of different personalization vendors. We were using Monotate here earlier to showcase that simple banner being displayed. But depending upon your vendors, you can see we have a massive marketplace built out that will allow you to serve really any number of use cases across everything from retail, like we were just showing, but also can highlight things like healthcare providers, B2B, all sorts of different agencies as well. So this allows us to basically help build out the rest of that data supply chain. Once we have our connectors configured, you can see a number of these others that we have built out for the demo. This will allow you to automate a number of the processes that might have taken a lot of time in the past. So again, once we have this all connected, we're able to provide those personalized experiences like we just showed on the front end. We can obviously get much more complex with the use cases. We were simply using a quick little example for this demonstration, but just know that once this is all set up, you're able to automate those processes, start taking action and removing users and from those audiences as they move in and out of them in real time. So that gives us basically a quick view into the system. Matt, I will turn it back over to you here, unless there's any other color you have to add.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. No, that was great. I think what we learned there was kind of a way of unifying many data sources into a kind of a singular or central customer profile that can then be used as the foundation for data orchestration to various, technology venues where you might be engaging the customer or potentially, analyzing that customer data to come up with further insights. So if you do have questions, now would be a good time to ask them using the chat box. We do have a couple that are coming in, so why don't we go ahead and take our first question is, how do you recognize the same customer across different technologies? So I'll get us started on that question, Ryan, and then if you wouldn't mind just loading up the visitor ID attribute, then we can show that one off. But Tealium has a patented what we call a visitor stitching technology that basically enables our customers, the end users, to define their own identity resolution strategy. So it's a pretty unique way of managing customer identity. We are a deterministic identity resolution platform. So we require there to be a direct connection between two different profiles that generally get created when the same customer might engage either on two different devices or on two different venues. But basically, through the use of a special attribute that we call visitor ID, customers can identify what data point, let's say email address, or one that's going away soon here is the IDFA for mobile. But Ryan, why don't you show us the visitor ID attribute just to give us a sense for where that would be defined?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. So I pulled up, as Matt was mentioning, within the attribute building process, we have the ability to just add the visitor ID as an attribute. I've got a couple of these built out, as Matt was talking about here, with potentially like a customer email, a customer ID, maybe an internal membership ID. What's really important here is that this visitor ID attribute is a unique identifier for your customer that can go across platforms and across technology. So
hey, Ryan,
what this is,
Ryan.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, can you click the share screen button so that we can see your screen?
Oh, I apologize. It went back.
Yeah, all good.
Are we good there?
Nope, we're still on the slide. So if you click on the Bright Talk screen where it says share screen, there you go.
All right, my apologies. Yeah, so as I was just kind of mentioning, the visitor attributes you can see. Are we good?
Yep, see it. Perfect.
All right, sorry. So as Matt was kind of mentioning, and as I just was alluding to, this is what the visitor IDs will look like when we have them built out. This is showcasing something like a customer ID, an email, or a membership ID. But why this is important is because the CDP is always identifying your users. So whether it's through an email address or a customer ID or whatever, every profile in the CDP is going to have some sort of identity. And that's important because we're trying to stitch users based on these identifiers at every session. So once we find a unique identifier across two different profiles, our patented visitor stitching process will combine the attributes from each of these different profiles into a new master profile that replaces them and gives you basically a chronological order of all the attributes that have happened in that profile. And this is really powerful because we can now start to do things like cross-channel identity resolution. We can understand if somebody is visiting on their mobile phone and now logs in with the same email address on the desktop. We can create a new master profile and understand more about that user and make sure that your analytics providers know that that's one user, not two separate users.
Cool. Yeah. That's definitely, it's a critical technology at the foundation of a first party, kind of a first party strategy, your ability to recognize the same customer across many venues. So thank you, Ryan. So I got another question here. This one's about data sources. So maybe if you could load up the data sources screen. Do you need to use the Tealium IQ tag management system? And the answer to that is no. We are actually a vendor neutral platform. So what that means is we really try to be modular and fit in where you need us. So if you're using a different tag management system, and Ryan can show us a couple here, we will integrate with basically any source of data that we can possibly integrate with to get data in to do all that cool stuff with that Ryan showed us earlier. So what other tag managers do we have in there, Ryan?
Yeah, so we have Google Tag Managers is going to be probably the most familiar for our kind of free solutions out there. Adobe Launch is another big one. We do have the ability to connect with AMP as well. And you'll see just JavaScript. There are a lot of people, believe it or not, that are not using any sense of a tag manager and they're just hard coding JavaScript onto the page. That's the case, as Matt was mentioning, our idea is to just try to pull that data in from wherever it comes from. And we've got a ton of experience working with Google Tag Manager and Adobe Launches out there. Again, from our implementation team, we've got tons and tons of people that are using these tag managers. So cool. Definitely don't have to use TIQ.
Cool. Then we got a couple of questions on integration. So maybe pull up the connectors that you had open with Eloqua. And the first one is around, you mentioned how our integrations go deeper. What did you mean by kind of the extra configurability that we've got in our connectors versus connectors you might find in other platforms?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Let me pull up Eloqua here as a quick example. So as you can see, again, we've got a whole bunch of different connectors, which is great. Having a number to choose from is always good, but being able to actually do something with those connectors is obviously very important. So let me just click in here. I was sourcing just a quick cart abandoner audience for this just as an example. But what we're doing here is basically taking a specific action with whatever connector. So if I wanted to, as somebody abandons a cart, go ahead and subscribe them to an email group or list. We'll go ahead and add them to a shared list here. This would pull up, and you can see I actually have kind of my Eloqua connector with this. So this is all of my lists that I've created in Eloqua. It's not super important. I'll just select this one for the sake of it. But to Matt's point, what we're able to do is actually map data points directly from our attributes and our data layer right over to this, in this case, Eloqua. So we could simply pull up my customer email. We'll say our customer email address is going to be mapped over to the email address field within Eloqua. Obviously, we need that so that we can add that user to that list. But you may have form fill information that's coming along with that. So we can put in things like first name. We'll go ahead and put this in here. And basically, you can see what we're doing is simply mapping things from the CDP directly over into our technology of choosing. So this is just Eloqua. Other technologies that will allow us to send multiple data points, we can do the same sort of thing. So this is really powerful in the sense that we're not just sending an email or adding a user to a list. We're actually able to send over additional data points that can be very useful. It could be a rich data set that you have offline or whatever. We can now append it with the online system and the connector here.
Very cool. All right, one last question. So any more questions, definitely last call for questions, but we have one more to go over. What happens when you don't have an integration? So great question. We actually build our integrations on customer requests. So if we don't have one, we will build it based on what a customer needing it. But for the case where we don't have one ready, we do have some additional options built into the system. And Ryan, why don't you show us those?
Awesome. So yeah, it's a great question and something we get asked a lot. It's obviously we can't have every single technology vendor out there, but if that technology does have the ability to receive data, if they have an API endpoint out there, we generally can get data to them via a couple different flavors of webhooks, depending upon what they might be able to accept. So we've got a regular webhook. We've got OAuth 2 and 3-legged for some of the API guys out there. Just know the main important thing is in the interim, we'll work with you to set up a quick little webhook to send whatever data we need to that downstream destination if they can accept it. And I think Matt was mentioning our implementation team will also take something like that request, put it into our integrations queue. And that's how we've grown to over 200 connectors on the audience side and over 1,200, I think, on the kind of the tagging side. So the more requests we get like that, the more our marketplace continues to grow.
Cool. Well, that brings us to the end of our presentation here. I did want to mention some follow-up resources in case you are so inclined. Once this slide loads up here, so we've got a few pieces of content that will really help further, delve deeper into what the Tealium tools ultimately enable and our unique approach to customer data platform projects. We recently released a book of use cases called The Joy of Data, with over 15 customer data use case recipes in there across many different solution areas. So definitely recommend checking that one out. It's a nice light read. Then we also have what's called the Definitive Guide to Customer Data Platform. So if you need one document that tells you everything you ever needed to know about customer data platforms, that would be it. Definitely feel free to go ahead and download that from the attachments below the video here. And then lastly, if you do have any questions or want to see a customized demo, please let us know. Feel free to fill out the contact form on our website. But other than that, thank you so much for taking some time out of your morning to speak with us. Hope you have a great rest of your week. We will talk to you next time.